And so that was the end of our elementary school. I was bullied. Like, I cried every day. And
God, that's terrible.
Yeah. I mean,
what kind of bullying?
Well, because I was a little baby gay and I didn't know it yet. and kids pick up on that shit.
Hello and welcome to Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
And I'm Sam.
And today we're joined by a friend from college that neither of us haven't spoken to in a long time, Matt Robbie. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we're good, man. This is super great. Couldn't be more excited to have you. You're one of the people that first popped into my mind when we started doing this, simply because I know anyone who's changed a lot since college, when you go to one of the most conservative evangelical colleges in the world, is it becomes an interesting person immediately to me, as we've all done a lot. We've done a lot of rethinking since then, and it's hard to even look back on those times as like we're just not the same people. Like even the Matt Robbie I was friends with, there's similarities, but it's not the same Matt Robbie. So I'm really
yes and no. I mean, fundamentally I am, but like my mind is also opened, and I'm not. I guess I'll save it for the prompts, but I'm not as brainwashed as I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's first things first.
Yes.
Do you still consider yourself a Christian, or are you out?
I don't know. I think generally the idea of organized religion is meant to oppress, and specifically it's meant to oppress people without power or people who are not straight white men. So, and you can look at almost any religion and that's the same across the board. So I still maintain faith, but it's not the same as a religion. So I don't really know. It was recently I had to identify my religion for something, and I was just like, I don't know how to choose my religion. I think I was filling out some document not for work. I don't even know.
I was gonna say, you can report that employer if you want.
No, I don't know. It had to do some. Oh God. Anyway, cut that part out.
No, don't worry about it. We're yeah, I feel that, man. I feel like I'm often in the same boat. I mean, I still function within within a church setting, but it's certainly in a slightly different dynamic than it was previously. But that feeling I resonate with a good bit. So
I'm slowly pulling Sam out of there like a tractor beam.
It's like this is his missionary work.
Oh my God!
My outreach program.
Trying to pull me out. Okay. I want to get the backdrop on your life. And this is something I don't even think if I knew it before, I don't anymore.
It was memorable.
Is your backdrop. Like, where'd you grow up? Let's start with that.
Okay. I mean, I don't think there's anything significant about the way I grew up. I mean, I grew up in a family in Jersey. We grew up Catholic for a while, and then my dad found Jesus, and we started going to a Calvary Chapel, which is basically like a network of churches that started in California after like in the 80s when like all the stoners got saved.
And, were they the Jesus movement? Is that affiliated with?
Yeah, okay. I think it's all like around the same time. And yeah, so we started going to Calvary Chapel in Jersey, and it was probably mid elementary school. And I mean, I would say that we were never like, we went on Sundays. Sometimes we would do like Wednesdays, and sometimes I would go to youth group, and I don't even remember what day that was, but never quite fit in. I always just kind of felt like wow, these people are like super into it. And they
Oh,
really,
that would have been me.
yeah. And well, I know when I was listening to your first podcast, I'm like, oh, he was one of them.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that would have been off-puttingly super into it.
And I was just like, I don't quite fit in because I don't know. I just didn't. I mean, I loved the people and I tried to fit in. And outside of church, I fit in with them. But like in church, it's just like, I don't know. There's never quite that connection. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when I was there. I didn't like crave it outside of the atmosphere.
Okay.
But I went to public school and I was bullied in 5th grade. And so that was the end of our elementary school. I was bullied. Like I cried every day. And
God, that's terrible.
yeah. I mean,
What kind of bullying?
Well, because I was a little baby gay and I didn't know it yet. and kids pick up on that shit. And, it just like little things. And then I would cry because I was sensitive and then that would make it worse. So, which is actually super interesting because I was just walking from Trader Joe's like an hour ago and this clearly not right guy was like dropping the F word all over the place. Like, you're such a... And I was just like, where were you coming from? And he was just like,
God,
I guess because I'm wearing like gay looking sweatpants. I don't even know. And
that's so what you said. This is still 5th grade.
No. This is an hour ago. But no, I got sidetracked. But yes, 5th grade was bullied. Most of the kids in my elementary school went to one middle school. I was part of a small group that just geographically based, like went to a different middle school and didn't have to see them for middle school, but knew that for high school, we would all be back together. And I didn't want that because I didn't want to be bullied again. If that was going to happen, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So I begged my parents to send me to a Christian school because there was a Christian school that we knew of that friends from our church had gone to. So I begged to go and they let me. And it was fine. It wasn't like an out of body experience, but like, I guess it was a fine school. I mean, it was like shitty academics, but
shocking. I'm not.
Yeah. You know how Jerry says if it's Christian, it ought to be better. Well,
yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't better. And then naturally, like when college time came around, I was getting a lot of literature in the mail from Christian schools. And my mom was the one trying to talk me into going to like Jersey universities. And like, she wanted me to go to Ramapo really badly and Rowan and like maybe Rutgers.
Did she just want you staying like local?
Maybe, but she's like, these are good schools. And at that time I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And so I like didn't even look at them. I just looked at Christian schools on like the East Coast. And for some reason I just had it in my head that I wanted to go to Liberty. And because at the time they had one of the best education programs for any Christian school in the area.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that they actually did have, I remember hearing that while I was there, that it was actually a pretty good education program.
It was. And they got us in a classroom right away. And that was really important because that's where you learn.
Yeah.
You don't learn in like a college classroom. You learn in an actual classroom with children. So anyway, I went to Liberty. That was the only school I fully applied to. I started applications at Messiah.
Oh yeah.
And I probably should have gone there. Yeah, exactly. But I also chose Liberty because it was far and I wouldn't be tempted to come home every weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember I had that same feeling. Yeah.
That was why I left the school that I started at, was because I was like, man, I obviously can't handle the temptation of just being able to like drive back to my bubble every weekend.
And yeah, that's a super big temptation, but like also you don't grow up that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up going to Liberty. I mean, I learned a lot. And I was involved in student leadership on the dorms and spiritual leadership.
You were my spiritual life director there.
Yes, I was. I did that for 2 years and I don't know why I did it.
So you didn't have to do Christian service, right?
I don't even remember that.
You know, I remember I signed up for prayer leader because I didn't have to do like your community service, which they called the Christian service. I remember when
What a joke that was.
And I told our RA, Brenton, that I remember him getting so mad at me. He's like, "Why would you tell me that?" Because if you think anyone in this hall is taking the occupation of prayer leader seriously, you are delusional. Like, no, everyone's doing it because I don't want to go rake leaves for 20 hours. This is easier.
But like, I don't regret going to Liberty totally. Now that I look back, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But at the time, I learned a lot. And I think I mostly learned who I wasn't. And that's really important. So on like dating profiles, you know, they often, well, maybe you guys don't know because you're not on them. But
and we got married like good little Christian boys.
Oh boy.
21 years old.
My marriage certificate came with my diploma.
But like on those, you have to put your college, and for a long time I had Liberty on there. And then the messages I would get of guys saying, "Whoa, you went to Liberty? I can't believe that. How could you do that? What was it like?" And I was just like, no, I don't want to have these conversations.
Yeah,
It's not a like first meeting kind of conversation. And so I don't have it on anything. And just because like, not that I'm embarrassed, but it doesn't it doesn't reflect who I am.
Yeah.
I'm
not that it's the same. Not trying to make some false equivalencies here, but I just remember even having to put it on job applications. You're just like,
oh no,
I just don't want to have this conversation. And it's so, you got a master's, right? You obviously, because you're in education, I think. So you would have.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I only did master's.
Okay. I didn't know if you had to. Anyway, I mean, same here. So I'm like, I can't remove myself from it at all. So I've just been so dependent on like work experience to like offset my college experience. And I don't know, I guess it's finally there because I have a regular person job, but I'm
glad I didn't do that, because when I was graduating in 2010, that was during the recession and you couldn't get a teaching job. My first year out of college, I wasn't even teaching. I was subbing and working at like American Eagle.
Oh yeah.
And they actually they told us, I think the dean of education was like, we actually recommend that you don't get your master's right now because schools don't want to have to pay you more for having a master's.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't get my master's at the time, and I was going to go back and get it a few years ago. And then I'm in a charter school right now, so I don't need a master's.
Okay.
And I actually I believe in unionization. I think it's a great thing. Mm-hmm. However, I don't love the UFT, United Federation of Teachers, and that's the union for New York City public schools.
Okay.
And for people who don't know, I live in New York City. I'm in Queens now, and I teach science in East Harlem, and that's a whole other subject.
That's cool.
But yeah, so I don't need a master's right now, and I don't want to get one because I have no desire to go back to school.
Yeah.
I feel that.
I don't. I feel this like strong pull to go back to school, but I just don't have any.
Nope.
I don't have time. Money's a little tight.
They would pay for me to go back and get my MBA, and I just can't.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
I just don't. It's like the last thing I want to spend my time on.
Exactly, especially right now too. I mean, we're going through a pandemic, and teaching has never been harder. I'm barely keeping my head above the water as it is. So put schoolwork, like my own schoolwork, on top of that. Nope, that's not happening.
Are you teaching remotely? Do you have to do that?
Yes. And okay, complicated, but our school did this whole thing where we were hybrid for the lower elementary up to second grade. And I teach second grade.
Okay.
I teach second through fifth grade science. So we were hybrid, and I was in 2 days a week for lower elementary, and then the rest of my kids were all remote. But we decided to be strictly virtual after Thanksgiving until we come back in the new year because of kids and families and staff members traveling.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Possibly spreading the virus. So we're like, you know what, that's a really bad idea. And yeah.
Dude, I would think that's a reasonable thing to do. Jill, her school just made a decision, even though they're going to start giving the vaccine to teachers in February, they decide that like pretty much right after Christmas, like break, everyone is going back to school, and they're going to do hybrid. Like kids don't have to go back, but it's like, why do that? 3 weeks from the day you're going to send people back to the school, they're just going to start doing the vaccination. It's like, it's so insane. Like, to make that decision like right before it, especially after everyone travels for the holidays because people don't believe we're actually in a pandemic. It's like so dumb.
So yes, it's a lot of things. But we go back mid-January and we're going to be hybrid. So I'll be in the building actually 3 days a week, which I'm not thrilled about. But I do think that it is the best way to teach. Virtual teaching, remote teaching, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
we try our best and it works for some kids, but there's so many kids who it doesn't work for and it's just not right. And I want to be safe. I want to do the safe thing, but I also want the kids to learn. So we're trying to find like a happy medium, and it's all about compromise right now.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, but like, I just can't wait for that vaccine. Just like shoot me up.
I know, dude. Even when people ask me the question about it, like, are you going to get it right when it comes out? I'm like, the fact that you want to have this conversation with me means that we're not where we need to be as a society.
Right.
Dude, I don't want to derail things, but can I throw a headline at you guys?
Yes.
I saw this on the way home. I'm like, this we got to talk about.
Were you looking at it while driving?
Yeah. Oh, come on. Just out me on podcast. Okay, so here's the first paragraph. Actor Kirk Cameron is facing criticism for organizing at least 2 events in Southern California in recent weeks where dozens of maskless people stood shoulder to shoulder to sing Christmas carols in protest of state and local stay-at-home mandates. Let me just mute this while I throw my phone.
He is a crazy Christian.
Yeah.
He's like one of those Christians who relies solely based off faith and like no actions. So my parents are very conservative, and we don't get along clearly on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's one thing we do agree on. Like my dad he runs a rehab ministry at his church, and he doesn't go to church because he goes, no, there are too many crazy Christians there who, they have to wear a mask for service. But outside of that, they're not wearing any masks. And they're like, oh, God will keep me safe.
Yeah.
And like, Kirk Cameron is that. He's that person. And I saw the TMZ video of it today. And it looked ridiculous.
Dude, he looks like a claymation character in a lot of ways. Looking at his face, I'm like, am I watching a cartoon or a real life human being? There's something like that. He's got like this fake smile going. It feels like everything about him seems like too much. It's like,
and his sister's not much better. They're both toxic.
Yeah, it's wild.
Where did Stephen Baldwin go? Come on, let's bring back the good old boys. I think that the one thing that you have to consider with that stuff is like, it's pretty clear that if you want to be prominent within that like very conservative right-wing Christian community, like you have to be political and loud. You know,
an asshole.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I didn't really care about telling people I was from Liberty until Junior started spouting off left and right.
Yeah, I know. I mean, people around here didn't even really know. Most people that I came into contact with, I was like, I go into Liberty University, and they're like, oh, what's that? And now they're just like, now everyone knows. They're like, oh, yeah, is that the guy who liked to watch people fuck his wife? And it's like, yeah, that place.
Yep. But you know what? Back years ago, a lot of people knew who his father was because of his political activism as well.
Yeah.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. They're both they just want to be heard or want to be heard, and it's just like it's that brand of Christianity that's dangerous.
Oh yeah, it's super dangerous. I feel like that's one of the reasons like we even want to keep having these conversations and do this. Like, I mean, we try to keep it somewhat light, but we're also like, I don't know, that's what we grew up in. And I mean, I see the way that it affects a lot of people that I know from childhood.
I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed your time at Liberty and that it wasn't like a negative experience. Like, I guess, at what point did you, like, when did you kind of realize that you were gay?
Middle school.
So you were living with that knowledge, like, while at Liberty, surrounded by all that.
So, yes. Yeah. It's like, a really loaded question because you're also taught your entire life that who you are is wrong.
Yeah.
And you're taught that, ooh, you can pray it away. And Liberty is known for its conversion therapy. And it's a whole thing. Back in, I think it was high school, my dad like found porn in the history. I didn't like clear it from the history, and I got sloppy. And
Yeah. We've all been there, man.
yeah,
In there.
and he confronted me about it, and so he enrolled me in this like online conversion therapy. And they don't exist anymore, thank God. But it was like toxic as fuck. And I mean, conversion therapy itself is toxic. And Liberty is known for like having a very toxic brand of conversion therapy. Dane Emmerich, I'm sure you remember him. He
Yep.
is not a great person. I'm on the record saying it, don't really care. But so my second year as an SLD, there was a guy on our dorm. And so you guys, this was the year after I was on the dorm with you. And we hooked up. And he felt like super guilty and was just like, really going through it. And was involved with conversion therapy with Dane Emmerich. And in the process outed me. But like told me that he was outing me. And so I was like, I'm going to get ahead of this. And so I went to Dane myself. And I was like, listen, so yeah, this is something I'm struggling with. And you're not going to do anything about it because honestly, I could have been kicked out of school for that. Because that's just how that was Liberty's rule.
Yeah. Dude, the guilt that they put on people to just narc. I mean, not just with that, but with anything. This person was drinking. I was at a party and I might get caught. So they're like, it's literally like, just you rat this person out and that person out and you'll stay and we'll just deal with them. Like It's really bad.
That's something that like abusive people in that environment use. Like I somebody that I was close to, was dating someone at the time that was manipulative. And I remember him pulling that stunt, like they were going to break up. And he's like, well, I've just been feeling really convicted about some of the things that happened with us. And so I think I really feel led to talk about it with whoever, and it was just like this moment of panic, like, am I going to get penalized? Am I going to get kicked out?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a thing. It's a real fear. I was terrified, but I went to him but I also went with such like fake confidence that I was safe. There was like never further conversation about it again. And yeah.
They didn't like require you to go to a group or anything. That wasn't a requirement if they knew, right?
No, I mean, maybe it could have been, but I didn't even give that opportunity.
So you like bluffed your way out.
Yeah, and I don't really know how it worked, but
you don't convert me, I'll convert you.
I was just like, I'm struggling with it, but I'm dealing with it on my own. And like my dealing with it was like going back to the dorm and watching porn and jerking off. And so I'm like,
dude, I love this. This is so fun because everyone in the dorm was doing that almost every night, but no one ever would like, it would never come up. It's just like church, like when pastors talk about it, everyone just silently sits there, rigid, giving side eyes to everybody.
And you
why am I the only one?
And you clap your hands and you don't move, and like you're squeezing your hands so tight.
And then they're like looking at their wife, like she doesn't suspect a thing.
Yeah. So it was like, yeah. Anyway, so Liberty's got this reputation for a pretty terrible experience for gay people. But they also have a ton of gay people. There were gay people on our dorm. I am friends with some of them now, or one of them now. One of them was actually, I'm not going to out him because that's not cool, but like was involved in student leadership on our dorm. And, but like, I always knew it. And then he like recently was like, yeah, actually it's true. I'm like, I know. And but he's also,
I can't imagine having to keep that like on the DL, like, because it's obviously it has to come up. Like, it's not like, I don't know. I feel like I imagine that it comes up from like at times, or that you feel like you have to like dot like when
Well,
everyone's
there are
just
two things. It's like, one, you feel like you can hide it, and you feel like you can just keep doing what you need to do to pass.
Yeah.
But also you feel like, I don't know, I genuinely felt that I would be able to control it eventually. But it was
you
just
felt
I
like that
wouldn't.
while you were at Liberty. You felt like you might be
Oh
able to
yeah,
just, like
absolutely.
not be like even if you like were gay, just like not do gay things or whatever. I don't know.
So when I came out to my parents after college,
Mhm.
it was a little mixed, but well, I mean, it was not mixed at all. They just weren't supportive. They recognized I was born that way, and that was progress, I guess. But my dad, who is sober, he's an alcoholic. He relates his alcoholism to my homosexuality,
Okay.
in that
Yeah.
they're both something that you can suppress. And like technically he's right, but that also leads to a terrible existence.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
probably unhealthy. Like
oh,
it's like the difference it seems, and obviously jump right in on this is like you your alcoholism is a behavior that affects everybody around you negatively. Like
mhm.
if you in an insulated bubble, like there are lonely hermit assholes that just are alcoholics and they do that until their heart and liver give out. Like, but it's like the difference being like you suppress alcoholism because it's better for your relationships and your mental health, as opposed to suppressing being gay is like damaging to your mental health and doesn't do anything for your relationships outside of the
Right.
fact that your parents didn't support it. And that's like,
Because like ultimately I'm not hurting anyone.
yeah,
And so that's where it gets so frustrating, because you hear Christians who reference, and this is also where I'm torn, and this is partly why I'm torn when it comes to the whole "am I a Christian" kind of thing, because you look at the Bible, and the Bible says what it says, but there are lots of schools of thought that believe that the Bible has been mistranslated, which is fair. I don't know, but I also know that it was a book written by men who are not perfect. So I don't want to offend anyone who believes the Bible to be true, but I also know that like what is considered a sin almost everywhere in the Bible is an action that hurts somebody. And this is an action, or not even an action, it's a way of being that doesn't hurt anybody. Like if I'm getting hurt, it's because I want it.
yeah,
It's like not it's not a it's it doesn't fall into the same category. So if you're a Christian and you're coming at me that it's a sin, and I'm just like, how? Like how am I hurting anyone?
yeah. I feel like those are the types of people who are, their mindset has essentially become they're the type of people who just wanted to be told by some sort of authority. The authority is given. It's not like that. It's not necessarily earned in most church
Mhm.
settings. Like I could have gotten an MDiv from Liberty and been taught everything that Liberty wanted to teach me, like, and then been a pastor somewhere, and they'd be like, he has good credentials, and those credentials only work as long as your congregation likes what you say.
Right.
Because the second you say something different, your lay people who don't have any education go,
Mhm.
well, that's not sound biblical teaching. And then they find a new place and you're out of a job. So it's like, I don't know. I think it's funny when you look at, like, I could have done that and gone anywhere, said anything. And then, but the people who are sitting under those people are the ones who just think they want to be told. And they just go to, I want to be a little bit more generous, but like it seems often that like they want their beliefs that make them comfortable reinforced.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when that's kind of their reasoning for thinking it's wrong. And it's funny, like when you mention the Bible, like and that there's different ways to take it. Sure, there definitely are. And it's funny because I've heard all the theological like reasoning for why the Bible doesn't mean this or means that and whatever. But for me, the most freeing thing was like, it's just, I'm like, you could do all that. But for me, it's like, yeah, Paul probably would have been like, it's not okay to be gay. And I can sit here in 2020 and say, that's cool. Paul was just wrong. Like, that's easy. I don't have a problem with that. And I think but to most Christians, they're like, well, then you don't have Christianity and you don't have faith and everything's a disaster. And now it's a free for all grab bag. And they don't know what to do with that. Like their minds don't really wrap around that type of uncertainty or I mean, whatever. They just need, it breaks a concrete foundation and they don't feel like there's much left after that.
But also, if you're looking at the Bible and you're believing the Bible to be true, then the only people in the Bible who are criticizing homosexuality are people who are not God.
Yeah.
You have priests and you have, I don't know, people writing the Bible who are saying that it's wrong, but like Jesus is never quoted saying it's a sin. So
right.
Yeah. If he didn't say it, I just, and like, this is also a thing where I don't even know how exactly I feel about the Bible and about Christianity and all of this.
Sure.
But if you're going to sit there and tell me that who I am is wrong because a book that was written 2,000 years ago says so, well, then screw you.
Yeah.
You know what I keep thinking about in regards to like what you're talking about with liberty is like, okay, you name the environment. Is it, summer camp? Is it a youth group retreat? Whatever, liberty, prayer meeting, you name it, right? There was always like an effort to create this environment where like you were open and you were going to spill your guts and share all your problems. But there's problems that everybody has that are not like, it is not a safe space for you to talk about your sexual problems or anything like that. Like that's what people were saying, when Jerry Jr.'s thing went public was like, this is one of those, they could, evangelicals will forgive you for embezzling money from the church or from a lot of other things. They will not forgive you for doing some sort of like what they perceive to be a weird sexual act.
Yeah.
And I always think like, I think everybody experienced it, but it's got to be nothing compared to what you went through, where you're like sitting in this circle of people being encouraged to like talk about what's bothering you and what you're struggling with and stuff, and knowing that like you really can't talk about what's really bothering you.
Absolutely
like,
not.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people on the dorm? I mean, I can't imagine the anxiety that must have caused. Like, what if somebody found out that this is what I struggle with? Like, there's people on the dorm that would not be supportive,
Yeah.
But yes, you're right, 100%. However, my roommate for the second semester that we were in the dorm together, I don't know if I like really should even name drop on this podcast just because like I don't really have anyone's permission. But he was my SLD partner for that second semester, and he and I were really close. I was one of his groomsmen at his wedding, and I was, even when I had come to terms with who I was and I was out and I was proud, I was still never told him because I just was scared, because he went into the military and he is a badass and he's just like a good person. And I was scared that he would not like it, that he would not agree with me, that he wouldn't want to talk to me. But I think it was last Pride, not this Pride, but last Pride, he was doing an outreach at his church. And he was going out to Pride to like join the celebration. And he's like, the church for so long has been bad to gays, to the LGBTQIA plus community. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm just going to show love. And he didn't go there to like preach, and he didn't go there to like, minister to everyone, but he went there because he wanted just to like celebrate the community together, because that's what Pride is about. It's about celebrating where you've come and being proud of who you are.
Yeah.
And so like when we had that conversation, he's like, yeah, the church screwed up. And he's like, well, I'm trying to make it better because we're alienating so many people. And this, the church is going through a crisis over
absolutely.
the past like decade and a half, where like,
what are you talking about?
Where young people are like, are fleeing the church because, I'm sorry, you're not inclusive. Young people don't want that shit.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, man. Like the millennials are definitely, it's like, I mean, I know they get made fun of a lot and they have their their issues, but it's like, I mean, like every generation will be marked by some sort of thing that you can stereotype us with when we're in our 50s. But it's not going to be, at least it won't be like homophobia or racism. Hopefully, I'm sure it'll be something else. But it's young. It's weird. I even within evangelicalism, young people, like a lot of them who were fine in it and comfortable with it from a theological perspective are like, they're out simply because of the exclusivity, and they've found a space and they're like to allow for things that have always been, that they've always been told were wrong. And it's like, the church is very much, it seems like the church over the past number of centuries, I mean, we have thousands of denominations, and that's because every time one group of people goes, we think this a little bit different than you, they just are like, oh, that's a deal breaker. And they start their own shit.
What,
People
Christians don't agree?
Yeah. It's like people aren't doing that anymore. No one's going, this is a problem, I'm just going to start my own shit over here. They're going, the thing's fucked, I'm just out. And like, it's like, this is a boiling point, and we've obviously been moving towards this point in church history for quite some time. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think do you think that any of the mass exodus is like a wake-up call, or do you think they're just gonna fizzle out and die?
I don't think it's ever gonna fizzle out and die. It's gonna evolve. Truthfully, I don't care. But sorry. But like, there are some groups that are getting it right. I think it was a few years ago, the Methodist Church actually, they split.
Yes.
Because they realized that, actually homosexuality is not a bad thing. You know what? We agree with this. And so they split because of that. And now they're I don't even know enough about it, and nor do I care enough. But I know that happened.
Yeah.
But you also have a pope now who is for same-sex civil unions, and baby steps, but like that's almost as good as a marriage.
Yeah.
But like that's also progress. So but like I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, how can you really know about it? But I'm a little. Go ahead, Casey.
I think that one of the fundamental problems that's happening right now and really playing itself out on live television is that there's a lot of people that look at Christianity, and they may not consciously do it, but they don't look at it as like, you name it, religion. They look at religion as not just like, how can I use this to be something better? What can I be using this as a tool or as a framework for my life? They look at it more as like, what can this do for me?
Yeah.
Is this a way that I can like protect my kids from the things that I think are bad? Is this a way that I can like, carve in stone my, ideas about this and that and the other, and have scripture to back it up? Because I mean, if we're being honest, like you think about people, and I know because I was one of them. I was very scared of you guys back in the day, and
what
dude, I grew up like very homophobic crowd that I grew up with.
Oh, I thought you were saying like me and Matt Robbie. I was like, on the dorms, man, you were scared of us?
Oh, he's lumping himself in with you, Matt. But really what it was, it's homophobia that they assign some Bible verses to, right? It's really comes down to like, I don't like gay people. They make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, oh, look, here's some ancient writings that back up the way I feel about it. And that's how it's always been, like in the communities that I was with. It was like, thank God we got these verses, because I really don't like them.
But I also found myself saying the same shit too. And I was like, I remember there's even a point where like I was almost comfortable with my sexuality, but I still was like, you know what? I'm not down for gay marriage. And like, you know what? Let them be gay, but like, let them just not get married. And it was just like, I don't know. I allowed my environment to dictate who it was. I found myself like, even after college, I still was going to church. I found in Acts 29 church. Do you know Acts 29?
Yeah, that was like,
Um,
that wasn't what's his name? Who's the disgraced pastor? Mark Driscoll? Was he an Acts 29 guy, or is
oh,
that
maybe,
different?
maybe. I don't know enough. I don't remember. It's also been 8 years since I don't know. It's been a while. I haven't been in church in a long time.
Yeah,
But after college, I found a great small church in Jersey that I was going to. Had lots of young people. I loved it. Then they had it's called Jacob's Well. It was actually a really cool church in New Brunswick. And then they had like a sister church, another Acts 29 church in Manhattan called Apostles. And they met in this old Episcopalian church, and it was like Sunday nights, and it was great. And I would go with a bunch of people who were my age, and then after we would go out to a bar, and like that was super cool because like you would hang out with your friends at church, then you would all go to the bar together,
yeah,
and like that's kind of I like that. But then I remember when marriage equality was passed. That Sunday at church, the way and like I was mostly out, but like I was out to people I loved and people I cared about and people I knew. But like I didn't wear a rainbow flag everywhere. But when the pastors spoke on their like I don't even know the words, their condemnation of same-sex marriage
really,
in church, I was just like, whoa, this is not the progressive church I thought it was.
dude, that is a bummer, man. That's like a
Yeah.
wicked bummer to just
And
think
so
that
I just
it's
stopped
one
going.
place.
So that was whenever that was. It's what was it? 5 years ago. I think of 5 years ago this past summer. So I haven't been to church since then, and I don't miss it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to I want to do a quick backtrack just to paint the picture a little bit better. When you were in college, so when I was on the dorm, you were a year ahead of me, I think, if I remember correctly. But when we were on dorm 11 together, you obviously weren't any form of out then. So it was definitely after I had moved on from there. We didn't really stay. I mean, other than in passing and maybe some like Facebook comments and messages, we didn't stay in touch much after I left the dorm.
No, I mean, I don't think I really stayed in touch with most people.
Yeah. So when did when did you start like losing that feeling of this is something I can suppress at some point? When did you start like kind of feeling more free to just be like, this is just fine. The way I am is just fine.
That's a really hard question to answer, but let me try because it wasn't, I didn't switch it. You know, I didn't like wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to be gay. And it was more like, so after college, I had a girlfriend and
okay,
we dated, I don't know, not even a year, but we broke up when the summer of 2013, when I moved to New York from Jersey, and I did a reset. We broke up. I moved to New York. I slowly started going to gay bars, going on dates, hanging out with gay people, having gay friends, and it was going to drag shows. But it was like I didn't love a lot about the gay community. I said I wasn't into drag queens, but that's really because I didn't love myself. So I had internalized homophobia for a very long time, and that's so common in the gay community, because especially in the Christian gay community, and that's not a thing, but like, you know,
ones who grew up in Christian homes and stuff,
but like it's so prevalent because you're taught. Think about it. How many times were we in convocation and whoever the hell was speaking found a way to talk about how gay was bad?
I'm gonna be honest. You probably picked up on that more than I did. I was probably just like, yeah. I mean, it's in passing. Might as well just mention Democrats while you're at it, and I wouldn't
exactly. But like, it was always it was like every week, and I'm just like constantly being told that, you know what, you need to do something different. You need to fix yourself, or you're going to hell. And fuck, it was just like it was terrifying. And I mean, I've gone to lots of therapy since, and I had a therapist who's like, you have all this trauma that you haven't dealt with from college, and you really need to work on this. I'm like, you don't understand, you weren't there.
Yeah. When did you first realize when did you first start to realize that you had internalized homophobia, and that maybe therapy was a good option for you to help?
So, I mean, well, no, therapy was years later, but I had done the work on my own.
Okay.
And it was slow. I mean, it's probably even within the past like 6-7 years, like since I moved to New York, it was a progression where I slowly got more comfortable. And you know what, as a white person, we've had to do a lot of uncomfortable work lately.
Yeah.
Especially, well, in regards to racism, and inherent biases. And
yeah,
I mean, I work in East Harlem, and all my students are Black and brown. And so I really have to check my privilege and like check my white supremacy. And like, am I walking around with a white hood on? No, I'm not that kind of white supremacist, but like we all are, as 3 white men, we have white supremacy issues at times. And we have, just like grown up with this systemic racism in our country, and we've benefited from it. And we didn't maybe choose it, but like we just complied, and not knowing always. My mom had a difficult conversation with my mom, and she goes, I didn't raise you to be racist. And I'm like, no, I know you didn't mean to. Yeah. But like, it just like, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. But like, I had to do that work when it came to like addressing my internalized homophobia, where I was like, you know what I was taught is not who I am. What Liberty taught me, what the church taught me, that doesn't reflect who I am and my values. And like, I am evolved.
Yeah.
And especially like being a science teacher now, I've really had to like check a lot of shit that we learned, because like, sorry, 6 days? Are you sure?
I know. I was just going to say, as a science teacher, you had to actually learn what evolution was after going to Liberty.
Yeah.
Because we did not.
Didn't they tell you about the water canopy?
Oh my God, I forgot about that. I actually was just listening to something like a week ago, and I'm like, oh my God, Christians did believe in a water canopy. I forgot.
The firmament. Wasn't it the firmament?
Oh my God, I don't even want to go.
My brother-in-law, he grew up similar, but he was like, what? I've never heard such a thing. I'm like, I mean, now, and it's true. So,
when I first told my dad that I was teaching science, he goes, "So are you teaching fact or fiction?" And I'm like, oh my God, no, we're not doing this.
I make fun of Jill. Has to teach, like, she teaches special education, so I always make fun of her. She's like, I have science class. I was like, so what day of creation are you on? Like, oh my God, I'm so far past it, and I can't stop making jokes about creationism. I just don't like understand like there's a lot of like how you can really think that. Like, I moved past that a long time ago, because it doesn't make sense that that rain comes from stars poking holes in the water canopy.
Wait, is that a real theory?
Yeah, I mean, no. It was an ancient theory. It's not the idea of the firmament came from, it was a way of explaining how rain happened before anyone knew anything. It's an ancient like belief of like, it just like, I don't know, let me come in this temple whore so that way my crops grow. Like that, it's just an ancient way of thinking. So
I was like, where's he going with coming in before?
I'm talking about my Friday night, guys.
Once in a while, you toss out an analogy that is the best.
I was just like, did I hear him right?
Yes.
Dude, I had one of those conversations the other day with a family member at it. Because, we're in a part of Kansas called the Flint Hills, and it's literally like giant hills made of flint. And I could walk out of my door, go like 100 yards outside of my yard, and pick up like marine fossils.
That's
like awesome. You can find them all over the place.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, that's cool. Just like layers and layers of shells and coral and stuff like that. And
that all got there because you're probably sorry. Fuck me! I hate when I interrupt you. Well, go ahead.
I was showing it to somebody the other day, and they're like, I know the Bible's true, but yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it really does.
Oh my God.
It's a hard spot to be in, though. I mean, it's hard to. I think that's the whole problem with that strain of Christianity, is that like it's all predicated on the Bible is inerrant; it's to be taken literally. And the minute you start to have issue with one thing, like you've pulled the bottom brick out of the wall.
Yeah, it's like Jenga.
Yeah,
it's like.
Actually, what's weird is they don't realize how much they're dodging just to keep their little their thing together. Like they don't take a lot of it that literally or seriously. Like they can, because they're looking at it from like it's like 21st century perspective, but it's like, come on, like women were property. Like why? For most of the books of the Bible, women were property. Like actually all of them. I don't know why I said most. Literally every single one of them. And we've moved past that. So why don't you just, I don't know, stop thinking some of these other things that we can't move past.
And like also stop telling me that Jonah was really in the belly of a whale.
I was just gonna this comes up every
and stop telling me that like Noah had 2 of every species on the ark. Every species, like, are you sure every species? When we haven't even identified every species yet, and we never will.
Dinosaurs.
They even had dinosaurs on it. Yep.
Like, don't go there, please.
I know.
Like, you have to be able to separate. So that's like a whole Christian problem where Christians can't separate literature from like, I don't even know what's the other type of Bible. Like, I guess can you call it that? I don't know. Anyway, but like you have to be able to say, you know what, this is a story and it's meant to teach a moral, and just leave it at that.
Or one of the depending on which I don't know, academic field you're looking at. I mean, I don't know that that Liberty and their eschatology center are looking at things this way, but I mean, there's a pretty substantial group of biblical academics that will look at even the story of Adam and Eve as, I mean, if you look at it as far as like God established these people, they messed up, they were banished from the garden, it really lines up super well with Israel going into the promised land and then messing up and being exiled. Like everything about it is really metaphorical, while also kind of contradicting some of the other divine narratives of how human existence came to be. Like nothing about it is like original. It's all just like pulling from their national history and using the same themes as previously written origin stories. Like it's all myth for the purpose of telling a story about who you are, how you got here, and where you're going. Like, and I don't understand why that's really, like, to me, like that's the purpose of all the stories we ever learned as a kid. That's why people love the fucking Chronicles of Narnia or Lord of the Rings. Like you put yourself in these stories and you see how they apply to your life and you learn from them and the characters and with their flaws and with the things that they're good at, whatever it is. And it's just like, to me, it's so mind boggling that like transitioning into adulthood, and I'm not trying to call these people children, but like when you transition into adulthood, you should be able to, if you took, I don't know, even if you took high school literature, like, and you, I mean, I was homeschooled, so well, I don't know. Fucked if I know anything about literature, but I have a friend who's who teaches middle school English, and the way he talks about literature and the way he reads poems and the way he talks about them and reflects on them, and like he's looking at it in ways that I never ever would have. And when he says the things he says about them and thinks about them the way he does, I'm like, that's beautiful. And it's changing him and it's changing his students. Like you hear how it changes in his students' lives and the way that he just invests in them and uses these metaphors. And I'm like, that's so beautiful. And then we get to like, I don't know, what I would consider to still be beautiful metaphor and story when you can separate the good from the bad. And then you watch an entire, I don't know, 70%, 80% of the Christians just like absolutely ruin it to a point where it's almost unsalvageable.
Matt, did you, like, being a teacher and obviously interacting with parents and stuff, like, do parents ever hit you with that kind of stuff? Like, do you have any like evangelical parents that are like upset with what you're teaching?
Thank God, no. Because also remember at the elementary level, it's super basic. And
True.
I'm not getting into like we don't talk about evolution. Um, and if kids ever have those types of questions, I'm like, well, most people believe, and then I'll also give that other point of view. I'll say, however, there are some people who don't believe that. There are some people who think the Earth is only 6,000 years old, while most of us think it's millions of years old. And it's just like I need to present them with both trains of thought because I feel like it's the ethical thing to do. While I don't believe in it, people do, and I'm not going to be that person who is teaching children the opposite way that their parents want them to learn. But I also don't think that there are enough parents who think that way in our school community.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
It's very gracious of you.
But I don't want to have that issue. Because it's not important. I want the kids to learn how to basically like use a scientific method. That doesn't mean that they need to learn in second grade what evolution is. No, I'd actually rather tell my second graders, hey, what are some ways we can think of to make sure that we're taking good care of our Earth so that it's around when you're my age?
Well, that's not important.
Well,
I remember like the last speech that Jerry gave before he died. It might have been the last one. He talked about how there was no sense in taking care of the Earth because God was going to destroy it anyways.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that convocation?
I wasn't there. My first year was after he died on his toilet.
So, I mean, for the longest time, because as a Christian, you're taught to say, oh, climate change is not a real thing.
Yep.
Like, but also why? Why is that an argument? Why are Christians, I should say, so intent on saying that climate change is not real? Because what is the harm in saying that, wow, humans are not always great and sometimes we do shit that fucks up the Earth?
Which is their premise. Their whole premise is that people aren't great. And that
so Christians should be able to say that.
It's because liberals care about climate change, Matt. If you concede on that, then you've given into the liberal agenda, and Q is going to be very disappointed in you.
But maybe liberals are onto something.
I think that this is a problem, though, that is at the core of what's happening to the church right now, is that political leanings and faith have become so interwoven in that community. And like it's these issues like that one in particular, whether they realize it or not, where their political leanings come into conflict with their faith. I see the people that I have the closest contact with, they choose political leanings every time.
And then pretend their faith backs it up.
Yeah. It's side with, stick with your team and justify it however you have to. But like whenever they're in conflict, political leanings always seem to take precedent over their faith.
Well, look at Jerry Jr. Look at Franklin Graham. Like you have so many high or people high up in the church who are taking these political stances that like contradict what they had been saying for years.
I know. Especially when like the whole character counts thing was like a big deal when Bill Clinton got a blowjob, but then they watched this guy absolutely destroy the definition of the word integrity, and they're just like, he's a baby Christian. This guy gets a pass. It's like,
he can grab him by the pussy, let him.
I know, and it's like everyone can see through it, and they're still pretending like they have the moral high ground. It's like it doesn't make sense. One of the things, this whole idea of creating your own narrative, for me, I had this conversation with someone recently, and it's a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe poorly fleshed out theory, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is like, I was taught from a very young age 6-day creationism. Like that was a really, I mean, I remember that so distinctly. All the way up into high school, I was reading books about it and being told that. Like, and that was the old, like, you know, other than that, I got the Bible. We would read the Bible. Yes, this stuff happened. Adam and Eve are real people, but there wasn't a huge emphasis on that. They were kind of just, those are blanket assumptions. And there was a lot of emphasis on Jesus. And even in middle school, maybe late middle school, early high school, I would read the Bible, and I would spend time reading about what Jesus said. And it's just like, oh, blessed are the meek, like, for they'll inherit the kingdom of earth. I mean, the kingdom of heaven. Like it was, everything was all about, like, I remember very distinctly thinking Jesus really cared about the people who didn't have a lot. And that stuck with me. But the backdrop was always like, the earth is this, like 6,000 years old. It was made in 6 days. And what I realized as an adult was, like, I could believe anything because my baseline that I had been fed my entire life was, like, just that it was just an anti-science perspective. Like, the foundation that was built for me was, when it was that, I was able to choose what I wanted to believe at all times without any real reason for it. And that's why I have such a huge problem with, like, I know you could say it's like, you could, not necessarily for you and what you're doing with your students, because it's not your job to, you know, necessarily teach something different than parents. But, like, as a homeschooled kid, I have such a problem with, like, the way I was brought up in with that belief, because I'm like, that was one of the things that really held me back from growth, was believing in something so strongly and them tying it to my faith so tightly that I couldn't. You just have to resign to the fact that you can believe stuff that doesn't make any sense, and that's okay. And that was just the foundation for me saying there was no climate change. I guess I have to vote Republican, and I guess I need to live my life like this. And it was, a lot of it was just because I had this idea that, like, I didn't have to listen to reason because the Bible just told me these things.
You're right.
I think
Reason sometimes is absent from it, but also to the opposite extent, where, like, we're constantly seeking answers, right? That's, I think it's a human condition. We're constantly looking for answers, and we need to have an explanation. And, like, as a scientist, like, yeah, I get it. We want to know why things are the way they are. However, is it okay to sometimes just stop and say, I'm not totally sure how the earth was made or how the earth formed, and, like, that's okay. I don't really know 100% what happened to the dinosaurs, but, like, I know they're not here anymore. Like, why is it so hard for humans to just say, you know what, I don't know, and that's okay?
Yeah.
I feel like we're bagging on conservatives a lot. I think it's worth mentioning too that that's not a viewpoint or a practice that's strictly, you know, a conservative thing. I think you see the same thing. Well, it's like you said, I mean, it's a human thing. Like,
exactly.
We have a hard time dealing with things that are uncertain, things that are not black and white. And it's much more convenient to just tell yourself, like, well, this is what it is, and that's how it is. And there's no reason to investigate it further. And anyone who contradicts this is attacking your belief system. So, you know, it's fine to respond to them in a sharp way, you know.
But I think being able to say we don't have the answers and that's okay has helped me kind of put into perspective where my faith lies now.
Yeah.
Because I don't identify with a religion because, like I said before, it's toxic, but I'm not totally sure where my faith is, and I'm not totally sure what's going to happen when I die, but, like, also that's okay. So, I mean, I'm not going to stress. I'm going to continue to, you know what, just, like, try my hardest to be a good person and to help people who can't help themselves, and to make sure that people are not taken advantage of, and make sure that I don't harm others. And, like, that's important to me. And that's what I think should be the goal for people, not just Christians, but for everyone. And, like, focus on that. and also say we don't have the answers, and that's an okay thing. And
Yeah.
like, that's just like good enough.
Yeah. One of the things I actually do want to, because I mean, what Casey you just mentioned is like, I don't know, what it does feel like we're bagging on a certain group a lot, and I know it can be easy sometimes for us to maybe go there, but something to when I think it's important to stress that I'm in general fairly neutral towards the types of things that some people believe. Like, and I think what I'm trying to get at is when I'm talking about for me and what was frustrating for me looking back on being taught certain things was that it when I look back on it, or when I see the way that the certain types of belief allow for people to make excuses for doing things that harm other people, or I don't know, do things that I, as someone who still does find a way to, I don't know, salvage the the wreckage of Christianity in some way, is like when I look at what I feel like I understand and see about what the intent of Jesus' message was, I get frustrated when it seems often co-opted, and certain beliefs are used as excuses to do harm to other people. And going even back to like what with you, Matt, and like and how difficult it was for you to just finally be yourself and admit to everyone who you are, including your family. Like, so much of that was just because the types of things we were given, and the types of things a large group of people believe in it. And it's like, those are the types of beliefs that end up hurting people. And those are I think that's why I get frustrated about when I look at my life and see how one belief led to another, or allowed me to think a certain way or act a certain way and make an excuse for it. Is that's what I'm trying to. That's the type of stuff that I feel like it's worth pushing back on, given the way
It's
that
like it's almost like you feel like you need to reconcile for some of those things.
Yeah.
If I could throw one more question at you, Matt, if you think back on like 2007, Matt, for people who are in that time period of their lives, people who might be gay, or they're not quite comfortable with it yet, whatever it is, they're in that Christian community. Do you think that this identity crisis that Christianity is going through right now is good for them or bad for them, and how so?
Is it good or bad for the people going through these identity crises?
Well, I just mean, like, if you're a young man or woman that thinks you might be gay, and you're living in this era of Christianity where it's pulled like in so many different directions, do you think that is going to help those people like move away from that community, or do you think that it could be repressive to them? I'm not speaking. I'm not saying what I'm thinking very well, but
That's such a hard one to answer, because like everyone's experiences are different, and then everyone responds to their experiences differently.
Yeah.
And like trauma's real. I mean, I know of people who I was friends with years ago who have chosen to live a heterosexual life while they have like homosexual inclinations, and I guess, to put it mildly, and they decided, you know what, I'm gonna find a way, and you know what, maybe that works for them. Cool. I couldn't do it, and I wouldn't want to, but like maybe you can. But also, that could also go back to like being on the spectrum of sexuality, because it's not linear, and
Yeah.
you're not like, ooh, you're straight and you're gay and that's it. No, there's like so much in between, and like sexual fluidity is a real thing that we just don't. There's so many different
Yeah.
sexual orientations that we don't even name. So that's super complicated. But I think growing up in this current era of the church, I think, is it going to help them on their journey? I don't know. I think it's so hard to know how someone's going to react, because like, you can't predict someone's reaction. So, I mean, if you would have, back in college, if you would have predicted that if I was struggling with homosexuality in college, would you have said, you know what, I think Matt's going to be gay? Or I think he's going to like figure out a way to kind of push it aside and like try to have a family. I mean, well, I'm going to have a family anyway. That's not the point. Or try to like live a heterosexual life.
Yeah.
So it's just like, who the hell knows? And I don't know if I'm even answering your question the way you.
Well, maybe there's no answer, but I see what you mean. And that's, I guess I don't, I think that whole like sexuality's fluid concept is not quite sunk in for me yet, to the point where I'm like, that's how I think of sexuality all the time. Like, I have to actively like check myself on those things. Like, not everything's binary and everybody fits into these 100%. Two categories, But I guess, is there resources out there that you know of for people who are struggling with that? Like, are there groups online and stuff for kids who are just trying to sort this stuff out for themselves?
Shit. I mean, yeah. I wish I knew more. I mean, I know the Trevor Project is a great organization with lots of answers, and they have a crisis hotline that is so important. If you are a member of the LGBTQ community, if you feel that you're like going through something, if you need answers and you need someone to talk to, they have a crisis hotline that is 24 hours, I believe. And so you can always like contact someone who will help you. It's more meant, I think, for someone who's in like a dire situation, more like suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that they have lots of literature that they can help you. Oh shit. I mean, I'm sure a quick Google search will honestly tell you more than I can tell you right now.
According to Wikipedia.
Oh, sorry. I'm on my Chromebook.
That's somebody trying to get out of jam right there.
No, I'm on my Chromebook right now, and awesome. It's a GOOGLE Chromebook.
The trevorproject.org looks to be the website.
Yeah, sure. But honestly, do a search and you'll find more answers that I can give right now, because I didn't prepare for this.
I should ask you, is there any that you recommend? Because that's a hard question.
Well, I can get back to you, and you can include links in the description for this. How's that?
Yeah, let's do that. That'd be good.
Perfect.
Cool. Man, this was such a good
It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, this is super fun. When you texted me about this, I was just like, so interestingly enough, earlier that week, I guess this was last week you texted me, I don't remember what day it was, but just a few days earlier, I had someone else from like college, from a few years earlier in college, who she's like selling Mary Kay now or something. And she messages me on Facebook and she's like, hey, you want to buy Mary Kay for Christmas? I'm just like, what the fuck? No. And then when you sent me a message, I'm like, oh my God, does he want me to buy something?
I'm selling Tupperware now.
And no, but when I read it, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Yes, because I feel like my perspective is shared by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's so important that there are people who are coming to terms with with who they are. And they need to know that like what we're taught in the church is not the be all end all. Like those are not going to be the answers for everyone.
Yes.
Maybe some people will find answers there, but like Casey, seems like you didn't find answers there. And I know I didn't find answers there. Or maybe we actually did find answers and they were not the answers that the church wanted us to find. So it's like, there's so many layers. And when you sent me this text and you're like, you want to be on this, I'm like, oh, absolutely. And I think it's important that you're having this podcast because you're also telling other people who are in other different walks of life that, you know what, we all have this like shared trauma.
Yes.
And it's okay to name it. And it's okay to say, you know what, we all went through this and like, we're all coping, because trauma is like how you cope with a traumatic experience. And like Liberty was a pretty traumatic experience. And we're like, still like we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't traumatic.
No, I love that the through line of anyone who was an evangelical, it's like grew up that way or found that at some point, it's and then left it. Like people who are still in it. I mean, yeah, there's still some people that I associate with who are in it that I can be friends with, but there is a level, like even having this conversation, it was so easy and interesting and fun. And it's like it is that shared experience of having that and moving on, that like, it feels like there's endless things to talk about. And it's funny, when I had thought about messaging you for probably a couple of weeks before I did, because I'm like, this is still new for us. And I'm like, okay, we're literally have only talked to, they're not that all the episodes are out yet, but Case and I, straight white men, we've talked to straight white men. We're like, that's just the people we know. And that's what we're doing to get this off the ground. I'm like trying to think of who I can message. I'm like, this can't stay the same. And I'm like, but then I start messaging people and I start typing it. I'm like, now I feel like an asshole. This just feels like tokenism. And they're just going to be mad at me for asking. Like I get all like super in my head about it. And I just was like, it took me so long to just finally message you. I'm really glad I did.
I am glad too. But I mean, there are also tons of other people that might not even be in your circle that can hear of this podcast, hopefully, and can share their perspective, because like, I know tons of people who grew up the way we did and live very different lives now.
I know. I honestly, I feel like the rate of people who stayed in it is wildly low. I mean, even with me and my like siblings, it's like my parents made the very intentional decision to homeschool to keep us all in it, and nobody is, no one. And all the kids we grew up in church with are like, so many of them are just like, nah, not really. And it's like, there's a common theme here that this didn't work out the way any of these like boomer evangelicals thought it would. And it's so worth examining. And I wish it was easier to have these types of conversations with, I don't know, like parents or other people who are still in it without it feeling offensive to them. But
it's like higher than the divorce rate of Pensacola graduates.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks for coming, Matt. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we get to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Please keep me updated, because this was fun.
Yeah, we'll let you know when it comes out, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time.